Hello, I'm James Andrews. I'm a reporter with Food Safety News. We're here at IAFP 2015 in Portland, Oregon. And with me I have Frank Yiannas. He's the VP of Food Safety for Walmart. Just happens to be the biggest retailer in the world. So, Frank, we're very happy to have you with us. I really appreciate you coming by here to answer some questions. And obviously my first question is going to be, what's it like to be in charge of food safety for the biggest retailer in the world? I mean, just day to day, I mean, how do you even try to tackle a responsibility like that?
It's a good question. I don't know, James, if you know a little bit about my background. I've been with Walmart now 6 years. And prior to joining Walmart, I spent 19 years of my career with the Disney organization. So I like to say I went from the happiest place on earth to the busiest place on earth. But totally enjoying it because of the ability to make a big difference on a large scale and really improve the lives of our customers around the world. So, that's why I'm here. Working at Walmart, it's a pretty fast place. You mentioned the world's largest retailer. We're told we buy and sell more food than anyone else in the world. If you think about it, we're operating in about 30 countries around the world, over 200 million customers a week, over 2.2 million employees, tens of thousands of food suppliers, and so forth. I could go on and on. I share that to say we realize we have a very important responsibility to make sure that the food that we buy is safe. So we take it first of all. It's a pretty important responsibility. Well, my day, any given day, is fast-paced and in a bit super-same combination of what I call working out of your inbox and your outbox. And what I mean in your inbox, what are those issues that arise day to day that you didn't necessarily anticipate? Food recalls that maybe you weren't aware of you perceive on any given day. A food issue in an emerging market around the world that you didn't anticipate. Any issue that might be related to food in the news, we're going to pay attention to it, because whether it impacts our brands or not, we are always going to ask ourselves the question, what does it mean to Walmart? And this is an emerging issue, an emerging trend. And so it's working out of your inbox, but we try to discipline ourselves, and I do at least, to try to work out of what I call my beliefs. What are the proactive and preventative type things we should be working on really intentionally? Despite the fact that it's a big and fast place, we managed to work out of our outbox. And examples that I would give you is over the past few years, you've seen us roll out a global food safety initiative for all our suppliers in 2008. You saw us actually roll out a beef safety initiative in 2010. In December of 2014, a food safety initiative. And at the top of this year, we rolled out a position on antibiotics. So we managed to do both, but it's challenging, but very, very rewarding.
So, thinking about this big task of managing for quality and safety for the company that sells the most food out of any company in the world, I mean, how do you begin to tackle that, like, on the ground in terms of technologies you're using, strategies you're employing? What does that look like?
Yeah, let me begin by saying I think it's an astute question, which is how do you do this on the scale of an organization like Walmart? Right. And I'll tell you that you kind of learn how to solve challenges or opportunities and problems a little differently when you have to do it on a scale of this size. There are three concepts that really come to mind. Number one is simplicity. Everything we have to do has to be simple, and an organization that's really large, when it's complex, it's hard to implement. So we strive for simplicity. And I'll give you an example of that. We looked at rotisserie chicken and how you prepare rotisserie chicken in our shops. We have over 11,000 retail units across the world. And so we took, using something that we coined food safety task analysis, looking at steps in the process, and we distilled a 17-step process down to 6 steps to make sure that we simplified how rotisserie chicken was cooked, improving quality and reducing food safety risk and enhancing compliance. So simplicity is really, really important. I will tell you another thing you have to do when you're operating on this type of scale is look for what I call game-changing or paradigm-shifting ideas. You can't necessarily solve problems like some of the smaller entities, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like. We all know that listeria and deli is an issue, and most organizations will really focus in on appropriate principles, which is sanitation of the deli environment, and we know there's a focus right now on that in retail. Training of your employees, and we're obviously involved with training our employees and sanitation of the equipment. But because of our scale, again, we said we want something that's a little bit more bulletproof. So we're going to do all of those things that a typical size organization would do, but we came up with what we call the game-changing idea by requiring all of our government suppliers to reformulate their deli meats to include a natural inhibitor that would prevent the growth of Listeria to more than one block in the shelf life. So, being a big operator, we have to leverage those kind of game-changing ideas. And then thirdly, I think you have to really be informed, because of the scale, use what we call data and analytics to be working on the right problems at the right time. An example that I use there, we have a handheld technology system called the Spark system that we roll out in all of our stores across the U.S. and we're in the process of rolling out internationally. But we do all of our food safety checks on handhelds as opposed to our computer. And what that does is it gives us big data. I'll give you an analogy. We took a look at rotisserie cooking temperatures for a single month. We saw some outbreaks with reputable retailers in the U.S. And so we said, how are we doing? And over a given month, what we saw is that regulatory inspectors across the land, they come into our stores units, but they're not necessarily in our stores when the rotisserie oven is opening, so during a period of time, they only check rotisserie cooking temperatures 10 times. We try to be responsible. We hire a third party to audit all of our stores. And we looked at how many times they checked rotisserie cooking temperatures over a period of a few weeks. They checked it 100 times. But because we're trying to leverage information technology and data, we looked at how many times we checked rotisserie cooking temperatures with our Spark system. And guess how many temperatures we got? 1.4 million. And I share that with you because it's a paradigm shift. I no longer need to rely on an inspector coming on a frequent basis. When M equals off, I know exactly how we're performing, what changes we need to make, the pieces of equipment that are more challenging. And so you think and you solve problems a little differently because of scale.
And you say technology is technology, say in the last 5 years or so, is really helping you accomplish those goals. Things related to like the Internet of Things, more sensors being available at a cheaper price.
Yeah, I think food safety has to go the way of Netflix and not Blockbuster.
Right.
And so I think we'll see a transformation, a revolution of equipment being automated, food safety processes being automated. And all I think this big data will lead to real information that helps us get better prevention.
Do you have other strategies or philosophies that you tell to your employees related to food safety? Any secrets of the trade you can share with us related to that?
I don't know if there's secrets, but I'll give you some principles that I think have worked really well for us in terms of strategies. Number one is I genuinely believe that our first and foremost job as food safety professionals is to try to shape and strengthen food safety culture in the organization. And so that's where we start, by trying to make food safety part of our culture and not necessarily something we do because there's laws and regulations. And so, for example, Walmart has basic beliefs for respect and individual who strive for excellence. And when we onboard new associates, we talk about food safety as being linked to our values and beliefs. Along with that food safety culture transition, it's this realization that food safety is largely about behavior and employ techniques that try to influence and change human behavior. 2.2 million associates around the world, so they're utilizing principles of commitment and training and courses and trying to make food safety a social matter. So that's number one. Number two, though, to manage food safety in an operation of our size, you got to have a plan. And so we have a strategic plan, and it's no secret. We benchmark and share it openly. That's based on 5 strategic initiatives. Number one is we're trying to reduce food safety risk early in the supply chain. So we have a host of strategies and objectives about reducing risk early in the supply chain. Active suppliers, large suppliers, small and local suppliers, and these strategies are being executed around the world. Number two, our strategic initiative is to try to reduce the retail risk factors. So those things that if we don't do right at retail, cold holding, hot holding, cross-contamination. And that begins with designing our facilities right, making sure we have simplified procedure, educating and training our associates, leveraging information technology to make sure there's checks and balances. So a whole host of strategies about reducing the risk factors. Number three is to enhance regulatory compliance. And while in a perfect world, regulatory compliance and risk would be identical, there are some things that we do for regulatory purposes that may not truly reduce food safety risk, country of origin, label, for example. But we have a whole string of work around making sure that we're in compliance with rules and regulations in the countries that we operate in. Number four is to manage emerging issues. And I find after 25 years in the profession, we spend a lot of time, a lot more of our time in emerging food safety issues. Ranging from antibiotic resistance and antibiotic stewardships to what's our position on genetically modified foods and a whole host of issues. And then our fifth strategic initiative is to try to drive domestic as well as global consistency, to try to operate in the one best way that we can. So, number one, it starts with culture and behavior change. Number two is really making sure that we have a plan, and everybody should have their food safety strategic plan founded on good priorities and food safety risk assessments. And number three, as I mentioned then, we try to leverage information technology. And although I mentioned the smart system, I could go on and tell you how we're leveraging information technology in many ways, whether it's our recall system, where we could actually communicate our recalls to our stores in a very rapid period of time, instilling register lockdowns so products can't be sold. And now we're working on a new initiative on what we're calling supplier transparency. It's largely an IT initiative to make sure we have greater transparency in the food supply system.
Right. Well, speaking of recalls, since the early 2000s, we've been seeing a rise in the number of retail food recalls that we've seen. I mean, the number of products has almost doubled since the year 2000. Why do you think today in 2015 we're seeing almost double the number of recalls in the grocery stores that we saw 15 years ago?
No, it's a great question, and I'm of Greek descent, so I've studied Greek philosophy, and I'll answer your question with a question. What do you think Pillsfield jelly electrophoresis, credit cards, Google, and whole genome sequencing have in common? They're all enhancing our ability to detect foodborne illnesses and problems. So we've seen, because of Pillsfield jelly electrophoresis outbreaks reported and solved that historically would have gone unreported. Credit cards, we saw an outbreak in Denmark related to sausage that Danish epidemiologists had no clue what was going on. They looked at credit card purchase records,
really
solved an outbreak. Google, we've seen studies published that, had people been looking for what Canadians were searching on search engines such as Google, they might have detected the Listeria outbreak in Canada long before traditional health reporting. And then whole genome sequencing, we've seen outbreaks solved today, or illnesses solved today, that occurred 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And so detection has gotten really good. And I love to use this analogy. I've used it over my career, and I will tell you today it's more relevant than it's ever been. We're in this race, and I say we, everyone in the food industry, and the race is between public health's ability to detect and industry's ability to prevent. And detection has gotten so good, and we're happy that it's gotten good. It's great. But detection is outpacing prevention. And so as an industry, we have to accelerate prevention. So I am of the opinion that I'm not convinced that the food supply is less safe than it's ever been. I actually think it's safer than it's ever been. But we're getting really good at detection, which is a good thing. It will allow us to further enhance prevention and further reduce the incidence of food disease.
Right. And so, detection's getting so much better. How can retailers start to improve in prevention? I mean, what sorts of ideas are you guys cooking up for how you might be able to improve more there to catch up with the detection?
No, that's good. So we have to accelerate prevention. And organizations that think, hey, I'm going to do food safety this year the way I did last year, they're at risk of losing and being implicated. And there are companies out there that probably have caused illnesses and they just don't know. But food safety is changing. It's not what it used to be. And so we have to accelerate prevention. I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm at in terms of my point of view is an increased realization that I think we need to start graduating away from generic food safety strategies to more specific food safety strategies.
Okay. I'm assuming you're going to explain that.
And what I mean by that is, these generic strategies, everybody's got to have a preventative control plan, or everybody's got to have a task plan. They're good. But specific strategies are really pathogen product based. Working with CDC and understanding good food attribution data, what are the products and pathogen combinations that are really causing the burden of illness in our country? And really go after those products with real intentional interventions. And we tried to do that, like I said, in 2010 with our Food Safety Initiative, in 2014 with our Poultry Safety Initiative, realizing that consumers are no longer buying whole birds, they're now buying parts. We came out, I think, with the first private entity with expectation around chicken parts. And right now we're spending a lot of time thinking about what else can be done in order to prevent. So it's moving away from generic to specific.
Okay. As a retailer, what's your perspective on litigation against retailers who get people sick, or who sell food that ends up sicking people, or litigation against a restaurant that served food that got someone sick? What's your take on litigation's role in food safety? Do you think it's a good motivator, or do you think there are other factors at play there that motivate companies to do better?
Well, at the risk of alienating some of my colleagues and brethren, I think that litigation has an appropriate role in the food safety system. And there's no question that it has helped advance food safety and preventing foodborne illness. As well as, now that a new focus on criminal prosecutions of people that do things that are pretty egregious. And so negative consequences, without question, have a role in society in the area of food safety. Being a student of the behavioral sciences, I prefer to gravitate, in all of the behavioral sciences, it was pretty cool. Positive reinforcement and positive consequences outweigh negative reinforcement consequences on a scale from 4 to 1 to 10 to 1 to achieve better results. It works in the classroom, it works on the manufacturing site floor, work in the area of food safety. So we, I think, as a society, have to really look at positive consequences and positive reinforcement and incentives for food safety, not just the negative. Positive, the literature says, works better than negative, but negative has its role. There's no question. And the reason is, I believe that the negative consequences is really strongly relying on what I call accountability. And accountability has its place. Even in the corporate world, we love to use the word accountability. We're going to hold people accountable. But it's not a word that really impresses me, because when you're holding people accountable for food safety, what you're doing is saying, hey, if you do something wrong, we're going to catch you and we're going to punish you. And so they're going to do it when they feel they're going to get caught or when something's like that. I prefer to think about in an enlightened food safety culture environment, moving from accountability to responsibility. Responsibility is different. That means that organizations and people will do the right thing, even when no one's looking, because it's the right thing to do to care about the safety of others. And so we do have to pivot and transition, and I think developed economies should move away from accountability to responsibility, but to your point, litigation and criminal prosecutions have to work.
Well, I really appreciate you answering that question. I was very interested in the answer. Just to close out here, what do you see for food safety in the next 10 to 20 years? What sort of progress do you see being made? What are some of the challenges that you think are going to be the focal point for you and other people in the food industry in the next 10 to 20 years?
I think in the short term it's going to be busy. We got a lot of work to do. I'll begin by asking this question. Do you think we're winning the battle against foodborne disease?
Yeah, I would say so.
I agree with you. If you look at data over the 20th century and you look at infectious disease mortality, it's plummeted.
If you just look at ground beef and E. coli and ground beef over the last 20 years.
Things have gotten better. Now, in more recent terms, if you ask the question, based on FoodNet data that shows the incidence of foodborne pathogens per 100,000 population, the message is, well, maybe we've stalled. Things have gotten better, and we've made dramatic progress, but in some respect, at least for some pathogens, we've stalled. And so the concept is that what got us here isn't necessarily what's going to get us there to achieve our Healthy People 2020. So we're going to have to do things differently. So I genuinely believe, and I'm not saying this to be theatrical, I believe that our profession is at a crossroads. I really do. And we can choose to take the fork to the left and continue to do what we're doing today and try to advance things like that. We can do things that are significantly different, like changing the paradigm of how we solve problems. If we take the fork to the left, I think we see a little bit of progress and things just continue to be stuck. We have to, I think, take some quantum leaps in how our approaches and how we make decisions. Now, my ultimate outlook on the future is not easy, it's bright. In my current role, I get to go around and meet students. So I'm an adjunct professor at Michigan State University. I get to visit universities like Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, Cornell, and others, University of Arkansas. And the reason my view on the outlook is so bright is because of the students and the next generation of professionals. I mean that sincerely, not to flatter the next generation of scientists. The decisions that we make matter, and so we have to make the right choices, but I'm encouraged by the movement and the changes that I'm seeing in the next generation of food safety professionals. So I have no question that 20 years from now, we'll look back and we will dramatically reduce the burden of foodborne disease.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Yiannas, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it, and hope you have a good IAFP.
My pleasure. Thanks for the time.
All right, thanks.